How, in your experience, has alternative forms of funding like the one brand capital brings to the table, how do you, in your experience, how has that worked out?
So we've always, looked at players which are going to create new categories, okay? Because we believe that at the end of the day, patients want care. Whether it is multi-speciality format or single format is incidental to them. They come because they want care. So a lot of our investments, like for example, Thyrocare, HCG, Richfield and all you've seen, all of them have been category creators. They've created new categories. So they may have started very small, but they became very big because they were catering to a need of the consumer, right? So that's how we've looked at those. And in that new category creation, the brand visibility is a very important ingredient, and that is what we have provided, right? So as against, in the earlier stages, about 7-8 years back, we were supporting people who were trying to create brands in the asset-heavy space. In fact, now with the new Springboard model, we have gone completely into asset-light space. So we're saying there are enough assets which already exist in the country. So you can create a services model on top of it, a brand-led services model. So for example, Lifespan is one of our investments in that domain. So we would always target category creators, new category creators, and not necessarily chase a category which has already been established.
I think most healthcare companies are now realizing that, brand awareness is also a very integral part of the entire business thesis. And of course, what you guys are doing is something unique in that sense. So that, if I come to you, obviously we're talking about these new segments, but there's still a plethora of investment opportunities still in hospitals and diagnostics and med devices. What kind of differentiators do you look for when you're investing or evaluating some of these opportunities? And maybe let's take a specific.
Thanks, Sudeep, and hopefully along the way reduce our reliance on gold. But that brings me to Shrenik. And Shrenik, from your perspective, looking at this sector and especially coming from this whole branding angle, how do you look at this?
So, when I look at it from Bennett's perspective and from Brand Capital's perspective, so Brand Capital is really the investment arm for Bennett as a media company, and we our mission really is to go and partner industry in areas where we feel that structurally there is significant growth, and also where we find transformative growth. So it's not just quantitative growth that we are chasing. So in a 175-year history, Brand Capital is just an 8-year-old business for us. And if I look forward 10 years or 15 years, and I create a scenario of where financial services will be in this country. So, it's reacting to where Mahesh said it is today. So if it's fallen from 20% to 15%, I feel that in the next 10 or 15 years, it will perhaps go back up to 25% maybe. So there's significant quantitative growth that we are talking about. Purely coming from the fact that penetration of financial services to India as a whole. So I'm not talking about, the top 3 metros or top 4 metros. I mean, where do we see, what is the penetration of financial services to India? So that we see as a massive structural opportunity from a long period, from a long view perspective. I think the other thing that we see is not just the quantitative expansion, we also see the transformation of it. And when I say that, I mean it in 5 or 6 different ways, such as how do we see financial services distribution, reach, intermediation? What is the framework that is being applied? So when we say that this is an industry which should not be giving much distribution fee, are we also saying that there is no value to be added through the entire distribution? It's a major question which we'll have to rethink. What is the value that the distribution chain adds? And as a result, what is the fee? The second transformation really is, just the trust and the ethics framework that need to apply to this industry. So, having set up an international office for an Indian investment bank, I had the opportunity to closely study how Europe, for example, regulates financial services. And it's just really fascinating how different the underlying approach to trust and governance is. So just to give you an example, if in India you have a long specification of what all needs to be specified in a DRHP, for example, in the UK there is no such document. There is no guideline on what needs to be specified in a DRHP. It says whatever is needed for an informed investor to make a decision, it must be there. So there's no need to specify. So there is an underlying trust, there's an underlying skill standard, and there is a way which you can enforce this without having to resort to hair splitting. So that's the other thing that will change. I mean, the trust framework which is underlying in the governance. The third thing is the skill standard itself. So if you look at financial services industries worldwide, it's a highly regulated industry in terms of who constitutes the service provider. So what kind of people can you employ for each of the roles? So, for a customer-facing role, what kind of skill standards are needed? So, the very extensive standards on, which is just completely missing in India. The fourth piece which I find missing is just really the awareness, the consumer awareness piece. How are these products being bought? Are they being bought because of a nice advertisement? Are they being bought because someone is hard selling this to consumers? Or are they being bought because there is adequate information about these products that's being made available by way of the right format of advertising, etc. So transparency, awareness, disclosure standards, all that needs to change. Of course, and as Ashish said, technology and how these are serviced, that will change. And obviously, I think the other thing is just the degree by which we are connected to the global markets. That's just a massive transformation we are seeing. So currently we are investors in 2 exchanges. I think there's proposals to invest in 2 more exchanges. We are investors in an insurance company, and we are still hungry for more.
Thank you, Shrenik. That brings us closer to our Q&A session, but I'm going to tee it off with my first question to Mahesh. So 2009 taught me to have a far more greater focus on liabilities, and it was a tough lesson, spending months on end just trying to figure out the asset liability mismatches in some of our investments. And coming through that, what lesson we learned, or I learned, was the person who had greater control over his liabilities came out sooner and stronger.